Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So today I want to pick back up in the book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. And we're going to be jumping into the section still in the prologue. I think it's called the prologue. Make sure. Yes, the monomyth. But the section we're going to talk about today is called Tragedy and Comedy. And so, like I mentioned in the last video, it's really good for when you just get to the point where all you see is the negativity in the world and you just start to feel really tired and drained, and you know, you get to the point of losing hope and faith in humanity altogether. And so what we're going to discuss furthermore is when we think that we're on the right path, right? We come into the awareness that evil in the world is more present than we thought. You know, I've mentioned before how it's easy to watch the news or specials like Dateline or 48 Hours, where you understand that there are people who are doing bad things in this world, but you know, we think that it's just a few and it's not very prevalent. And then after you go through some experiences in life, you realize it's actually more prevalent than what you realized. And so that's what I mean when I say waking up. It may be narcissistic abuse that you've come out of, some kind of psychological abuse, realizing that people are not who they present themselves to be, that there are pathological liars, people that choose to use and abuse you and exploit you, that kind of stuff, right? That's what I mean when I say waking up. And so it's, you know, on one hand, it's when you get out of a bad situation, it feels really good. It's like you can breathe again at first, but then you know, with the awareness as you I at least, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like this is pretty common based on what I've heard from others. It's like you have this desire to want to jump down a bunch of rabbit holes and just learn as much as you can so that you don't become entangled again, right? So that you can increase your discernment, your wisdom. I think that's totally normal and a great endeavor. But at the same time, as you're focusing on these disorders, it can start to feel, the world can start to feel like a dark place, and because that's what you're focusing on. Okay, so that's kind of like the vibe we're going to go with today, the spirit of the message, and it goes back to when you think you're on the right path, learning and growing, but really it's not the right path. When we're gaining understanding, but we're still, it feels like we're still being attacked from all angles, the more and more you realize, maybe you're able to identify more people in your life who have narcissistic traits and qualities. So it's where you get to that point where you're really tired and you're disheartened and you feel like the world's just a bad place. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, because it's like, to start with, you know, you had the protection of rose-colored glasses, right? And so you couldn't see the chaos of the world. And then you wake up, and now all you see is the chaos. So feel free to apply your own lens, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. So yes. So like I said, at first you may start to feel, you know, lighter as you rid yourself of more and more toxicity in your life, as you're able to identify it. It's like you can literally feel yourself elevate, and it's wonderful. But there's a balance there with trying to learn about the toxicity, because when you're trying to learn about something, you're going to put that focus on what you're trying to learn about. Okay, and it's that whole where you focus, whatever you're focusing on and you're pouring your energy and your time into, that's going to grow in your perception. Okay, but again, remember, our perception is huge with regard to our reality, you know, for each one of us. And so let's go ahead and dive in to the message today in the book. Okay, so if you have the book, it's going to be on page 27. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read to you. He says, modern literature is devoted in great measure to a courageous, open-eyed observation of the sickeningly broken figurations that abound before us, around us, and within, where the natural impulse to complain against the Holocaust has been suppressed. So I like how he's all-encompassing here, okay? He's talking about, and think about it. Think about it. He's saying modern literature, but it's really in everything. Our music, our movies. It's like, you have to shelter your kids from so much these days. I mean, my God, it's even the nursery rhymes are kind of, like he says, well, he says sickeningly broken figurations that abound before us. It's shocking sometimes, talking about, rockabye baby, in the treetops, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock, and when the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. It's incredible. And I know you know what I'm talking about. You might be jamming out to this great beat, in this song that you like. And then when you actually tune in and pay attention to what's being said, it's not good things being said a lot of times. So, it's sometimes you have to kind of take a closer look at the things that you're allowing, that you're bringing in to your psyche. Even if it's on a subconscious level. Again, consciously you may be focusing on the beat or the music, which is great, right? You perceive it as great and upbeat and positive. But if you tune into, again, where you place that focus, right, to the words, then it may be a very negative message. So I would just, again, encourage you to censor what you subject yourself to. Right? We're supposed to keep a close guard on our mind and heart. And so, but yes, it's all around us, and it's shocking sometimes how out there evil is, even in our entertainment and just every aspect of this life, right? At least it's not like back in the old days. I don't know if it was I'm trying to remember the exact era, but like the Colosseum, where they would just openly let people fight to the death and things like that. It was just, for sport, for fun. So it's like, at least we've progressed a little bit, you know what I mean? but still. All right, so let's go ahead and read a little bit. So he kind of expands on that, and he's talking about plays and stories and how all this is presented through entertainment. He says, and there is no make-believe about heaven, future bliss, and compensation to alleviate the bitter majesty, but only utter darkness, the void of unfulfillment, to receive and eat back the lives that have been tossed forth from the womb only to fail. And I love how he writes. It reminds me of Clarissa Pinkola Estes, right? He wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, because he again is very poetic and very expressive with his writing, and I think that that's wonderful, and I just encourage you to get the book if you have interest. There's no way that I can summarize his message and it still have the same impact on you, right, listening, as it would if you're reading the exact way that he is articulating and expressing the message. And that's the power of myth and story too. I mentioned it before. There's something to be said about the power of a message when it's presented a certain way. Okay, there's a difference. There's a relatable, it's like it sinks into our awareness on a deeper level when it's relatable, and it's going to be relatable when it's presented in a way that's felt, that's story-like. And this is interesting because through the lens of marketing, a lot of times this same technique can be used to gain popularity for a company for their products is to tap into the feelings of your customer base, right? Because it's just a deeper part of us. And that also, again, talking about manipulation, right? Persuasion, coercion. That's also what narcissistic people do. They tap into our feelings, which is why it's so crucial to get a grip on our feelings and to be able to operate logically first and foremost, right? So, but yeah, I love how he writes. He's just talking about how the world is just sickeningly broken, and there's these figurations that abound before us, around us, and within. So again, when you're starting down this journey, right, you're going to see, your eyes are opened, as the Bible says. You're going to see the corruption everywhere, and even within yourself. You can see that more clearly too, and that's why it's really hard not to get stuck in self-conviction, because then you're not going to grow any further, right? You can't even hear or listen to messages from wise people who are trying to help you along the path. So that's really important too. All right, so let's move a little bit forward. He says, in comparison with all this, our little stories of achievement seem pitiful. Yes. And let me just give you a personal experience with regard to that statement right there. So one of the first people I reached out to as a life coach, she was just a very kind person, very insightful, and I'm really glad that I worked with her. But she directed me to make a list of all my accomplishments, and I appreciate her efforts, but it was not at that time what I needed, because it's kind of like, just like it says here, in comparison with all this, when your eyes are open and you see the true scope of evil in this world, and how you've been entangled in it, and you even see some things in yourself that you want to improve. All of this mud, this muck that you're stuck in, just trying to focus on the positive. People say, look on the bright side. Little statements like that, they just fall so short from helping you to get unstuck, right? And so it's like he says, our little stories of achievement seem pitiful in comparison to the scope and the weight of what has been revealed to us, right? It's like when the Bible talks about death, that it's basically like you're seeing death everywhere you look. These people are like zombies, right? They're not truly living. They're dead in their sins. All these verses from the Bible come alive, and you can now see them with a different set of eyes, and with a deeper understanding. And so it's very powerful. It's very powerful, and trying to balance that out within yourself, just looking at in his words, our little stories of achievement. Yeah, it is pitiful. It feels pitiful in the moment, right? So there's a process, and that's where the hero's journey comes in. And it's and I think I am going to go through this book somewhat, at least, coming up soon. He has the call to adventure, and see, that's the perspective we need to have, that when we find ourselves entangled in these experiences that are very trying and very challenging, look at it as a call to adventure. You know what I'm saying? And so don't just meet it with doom and gloom and just sit there and be stuck in that mindset. So the spirit of the message today, and we're going to get into a little bit more, is to keep moving through it, and to gain better and better perspective along the way. Okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit down. He even talks about he says comedy as satire is acceptable, right? As fun it is a pleasant haven of escape, right? And then he says, but the fairy tale of happiness ever after cannot be taken seriously. And he expands on that. I really encourage you to get the book. It's great. So, and then I'm going to skip down, and he says, and this is really important right here. He says, the happy ending of the fairy tale The myth and the divine comedy of the soul is to be read not as a contradiction, but as a transcendence of the universal tragedy of man. So important, so important. Okay, transcendence, not a contradiction. The objective world remains what it was. But because of a shift of emphasis within the subject, that would be us, right, inside of us, it is beheld as though transformed. Okay, so in other words, you can only see the world with a different set of eyes after you've experienced transcendence. Okay, this is where the concept of paradox comes into play. Okay, it's like the world's not going to change just because of your efforts. You're not going to change it, right? You may have consciously understood you're not going to change a particular person who seems to be stuck in narcissistic tendencies, and you can see that they are stuck, and they're also keeping you stuck, and it's very unhealthy. And you may have accepted that's not going to change, and you can't change it. But once you remove yourself, and then you see the scope of it in the world, you might go into a state of hopelessness and being exhausted, and then, or you may go into a state of trying to be this hopelessly romantic kind of positive, what rose-colored glasses person again. But then there's this inner conflict within yourself because that's not reality. So you have to be able, like I mentioned before, to expand your mind and understand that both are possible here, just like he says. Okay, the objective world remains what it was. We're not going to change it. But because of a shift of emphasis within the subject, is beheld as though transformed. This is where we are now embracing our subjective reality on purpose. A lot of people live thinking that their subjective reality is reality. They don't see the objective. All they see is the subjective. But now we see both. And because of that, we can intentionally embrace the subjective reality, right? And understand that the objective reality means there's a lot of evil in the world, a lot of corruption, and it is what it is. Okay, do you see what I'm saying? So there has to be this transcendence. And then I'm going to read a little bit more. I'm skipping a little bit here. It says, it is the business of mythology proper and of the fairy tale to reveal the specific dangers and techniques of the dark interior way from tragedy to comedy. Hence the incidents are fantastic and unreal, right? They represent psychological, not physical triumphs. Again, you've heard the old saying, the battlefield is in the mind, right? And it's very, very true. Okay, and that's why a lot of these tales, these myths and folklore, fairy tales are so colorful and just fantastical and out there. It's meant to be that way because our minds. Think about your dreams. Think about how our minds work in our dreams, and all the symbolism and how unrealistic all that is, right? So it's kind of like myths are dreams in the waking state, right? Consciously examined. So. Yeah, and then he goes into a little section here. It's really interesting, and he says he's basically talking about the battle has to be won in our mind first. So that's the transcendence that has to happen. The passage of the mythological hero may be over ground incidentally. Fundamentally, it is inward, into depths where obscure resistances are overcome and long lost, forgotten powers are revivified to be made available for the transfiguration of the world, right? And then he talks about at this point, when this deed is accomplished, then life no longer suffers hopelessly, right, under the terrible mutilations of ubiquitous disaster, right? Yes. So our growth will remain stagnant, stifled. This is my words, okay? As long as we focus on the old, as long as we're focusing on the corruption that has been made, we've been made aware of, right? The negative. Even if we're going down rabbit holes thinking that we're getting somewhere and we have great intentions, if we're putting our focus there, it's going to be magnified as our reality, and it's going to keep us stuck. So the transcendence has to happen in our mind, okay? Which again is why you have to be really careful what you take in, what you focus on. You have to be the master of your own mind, right? Like a mental ninja. That's what you got to do to be able to keep a good hold on the reins, okay? So in closing, I feel like it goes back to the concept of paradox. You can't see everything in black and white thinking. You have to be able to be expanded in your mind enough to hold both realities, the objective reality, which is there's a lot of corruption out there, and the subjective reality, which is I choose to focus on the positive, the good things, right? You have to expand your mind. And here's the thing, okay? As just another lens to increase the digestion of this with regards to our understanding, okay? So narcissists live in competition, right? We know this. They're very competitive. Because their minds will not expand. They won't expand their minds, okay? It's like their minds are just drawn in or shrunken or something. It's just they're just frozen in fear, and they're very reactive, and they're very standoffish, and even when they're trying to come across like they're cooperative, they're manipulative, because they always have to have the upper hand. Again, it always goes back to competition, this power play, always. And so that's not the path, right? And I know that we, those of us with good intentions, who are honest people, we would never choose that path consciously. But I just want us to be conscious that we don't accidentally get stuck in what's the word I want to use? A mindset that is not conducive to creating a beautiful life, okay? And so that's why I feel like until we can gain a deeper understanding, faith is just crucial. And it's important anyway. Faith is key anyway, to open up, to keep our mind expanded, so that we can continue to breathe again, and to continue to breathe. Because here's the thing, truth is inaccessible when you're rigid and immovable. In other words, it's like fear is that snare, that trap. And so being able to keep your mind expanded is key. And a lot of times faith is what enables that to happen. Do you see what I'm saying? And so the true immovable force is love and creation. And so I just encourage you to keep moving, and to keep going, and to keep guard over your mind and your heart. And I just hope that this has given you a lot to think about today. I hope that the message has been inspiring and encouraging, and I hope that it's gotten the wheels turning for you. So thank you so much for coming along today to hear the message. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.